Greetings, everyone. I'd like to talk to you about a bit of a coincidence that is happening and what we can get out of it. The coincidence is this that we are around this time of year celebrating D Day and also should be celebrating the date on which Mahatma Gandhi was thrown out of a train late at night in Pietermaritzburg Station in Durban, South Africa. And if you saw the marvelous film Gandhi, it was made by Richard Attenborough, you'll be very familiar with this scene.
Excuse me, sir. How long have you been in South Africa?
Uh, a week.
I don't know how you got a ticket.
Just what are you doing in this car, Coolie?
I have a ticket. A first-class ticket.
How did you get hold of it?
I sent for it in the post. I'm an attorney, and I didn't have time
There
to...
are no colored attorneys in South Africa. Go and sit where you belong.
I'll take your luggage back, sir.
No. Just a moment, please. You see? Mohandas K. Gandhi, attorney at law. I'm on my way to Pretoria to conduct a case for an Indian trading firm.
Didn't you hear me? There are no colored attorneys in South Africa.
Sir, I was called to the bar in London and enrolled at the High Court of Chancery. I am, therefore, an attorney. And since I am, in your eyes, colored, I think we can deduce that there is at least one colored attorney in South Africa.
Smart bloody Kaffir. Throw him.
Just move your black ass back to third class, or I'll have you thrown over the next station.
But I always go first class. I've traveled all...
Gandhi later said that he was made on that night. That was the birth of the new Mahatma as a exponent of nonviolence and everything else that he stood for. So we can really regard that event as the birth of nonviolence. And so, as I like to point out, D-Day, which happened the day before, was the beginning of the end of World War II, which people hoped would, really bring peace to the world. Of course, that could not happen. You cannot get peace from violence. Violence and nonviolence are two opposing tendencies, and we really must choose between them. But anyway, if D-Day did not, of course, prove to be the beginning of peace, it was the beginning of the end of World War II, with its horrible cost in human life and human spirit. And we could say, I'm pretty sure that, in fact, we can be sure of this, I'm going to put it this way. If we were to really grasp the significance of what happened to Gandhi on that night, it would be, in the end, it would be the end of all wars. Because he was deeply humiliated, he was offended, which is a very frequent cause of conflict, individual, societal, international, and yet some kind of a turnaround happened in him, which led him to think, instead of, I'm going to get even with those people, which did cross his mind. He was a lawyer. He could sue the train company for having him subjected to that kind of treatment. But he rejected it very quickly. Or he could run away. He rejected that very quickly. I'm not going to go back to India. I got to face this thing out. So what he had to do then was convert the negative energies that this had brought up in his mind, the resentment, the fear, you can imagine, the insecurity, the anxiety, the hurt, converted them all into creative, positive forces, collectively known today as nonviolence, and in its active form as applied to specific ills known as satyagraha, or the clinging to truth. because this is really a profound insight that came to Gandhi, which could not have happened if he were not, I think, living in a culture which had this marvelous Vedantic background behind it, millennia of pursuing truth. He would not otherwise have been able to realize that the hurt that he felt, and especially the desire for revenge, were, if you will, a kind of distraction. They took him away from the truth. Now, that doesn't happen spontaneously to me. If I get angry at somebody, I think my anger is the truth. I'm going to hold on to that and act it out, and then I'll feel better and everything will be okay. Anyway, that's how I used to feel before I took to meditation and got some technique, some practice that enables me to make that conversion. What enabled Gandhi to do it, we do not know. He did not speak much about his interior development, though he wrote and wrote and wrote much about how it played out in his personal and social and political life. But what must have happened is he must have sensed, and this is the critical thing, he must have sensed this is not me. He wanted to recover who he really was. And who he really was a being filled with compassion, consisting of compassion, that had the creative power always to turn any kind of hurt, any kind of injustice, any kind of insult into its positive equivalent. In fact, in my own little personal development, there was an important episode that happened way back before I left New York. I was in Greenwich Village. If I recall correctly, I was sitting on my motorcycle out in front of the local coffee shop, and somebody in a car in front of me had the radio on. The civil rights movement was kind of getting started, and there was a rally, and somebody said to the rally organizer, "Look, they're beating us. Why don't we beat them?" And I thought to myself very quickly, yeah, why not? And the man very calmly said, because that's not who we are. In other words, this recognition that anger, or for that matter, fear, or for that matter, greed, are pulling us away from our real self. They are serious spiritual distractions. And so it's not just for the tremendous benefit that it delivers to the world around you. I mean, think of it, the liberation of India, the liberation of some 50 countries that were spilled out from Gandhi's achievement in India, throughout Africa, other parts of the world. All that tremendous energy is significant, of course, but an additional dimension is what happens inside the human being, that a human being can grow spiritually by learning how to convert anger into nonviolence. And so we can really compare and contrast in this way. What was the result, the outcome of World War II? Yes, it stopped the march of German fascism and Italian fascism and other fascisms in Europe and in Japan, perhaps. But it didn't introduce a new force, a new energy. And so therefore, having suppressed it in that particular form, it keeps cropping up in other forms, in other places. Tragically enough, most of us don't know how to connect the dots because we aren't trained to look underneath the surface and see what is the force, what is the energy that is driving this person, that is driving this act. So I think that's a training that each of us now has to do personally. And one of the ways that, as I've started out by mentioning, one of the ways that we can acquire this precious skill, which really puts us on our own spiritual path towards human destiny, as well as, helping the world around us to do the same. One simple way we can do that is focusing on events like Peter Maritzburg, learning how to draw out its significance, and not spending all of our time focusing on an event like D-Day, which is what exactly the world is doing right now. Because its significance is not going to change anything anytime soon for the better. So those are the reflections that I would leave you with. We have this juxtaposition of two events, one a very significant landmark of nonviolence, and between the two of them, they actually define the choice that every human being and humanity as a whole has to make in order to survive and go forward. So thank you very much. I welcome your comments on this presentation.